Fishguard ladies in a line. Boulders, brazen monkeys with a war in their minds, staring out to sunset, waiting hushed and concrete for their time. We'll have you running back to Cameron. We'll have you quaking in your knees. We'll have you running back to Cameron. We'll have you running across the seas.
Croeso and welcome to another exciting episode of Tales for Whales, the pod that never fails to be that little bomb of Jaeger in your energy drink, that little dram of rum in your Coke or your ginger beer if you're feeling exotic, and that little bit of Welsh joy just to fill up the glass that is life. That's pretty good, wasn't it? It was alright.
You worked in advance of that, did you?
Yeah, I wrote that down swiftly before we came on then, because I thought if we don't have one prepped, we fall apart a bit, don't we? So I thought I'd have one ready to go.
We buckle.
I'm Jack, and as always, we absolutely do. As I say, I'm Jack. I'm joined by my constant brother in arms, Franco.
Oi,
and today,
Savaloy.
Indeed. And today we're talking about the Battle of Fishguard. But before we blow our proverbial beans, what have you been up to, mate?
Well, I think the big issue of the day, Jack, is that you fucked it, didn't you?
How did I know this was coming?
It. You made me look a right fool.
I think it still worked, because when we were talking about listeners of the previous episode, The Laws of Hordar, will make reference to a very sausage-fingered depiction of King Hoel. And as we were talking about this on the episode while we were recording, I googled that very image, and I was relaying things. Oh, is it this one? Is it the one with the sausage finger? Is he sitting on something? Yes. Turns out we were talking about two very different pictures, but they both had like overlapping themes, didn't they? They both had sausage finger. They both
I'm not sure
sitting
if you
on a
cut it out. I said he had a ball chin, like a ball chinnigan. Like it looked like his chin was like a big hairy nutsack, and but I didn't hear that in the edit, so that might have been chopped. But the one I said looks so much more like a tea towel drawing. And then when I was hearing myself back, because I was at the gym working on my gains this morning, being a hunk, and I heard it, and I thought, hang on, that's not the right image. And I went into pure meltdown. I called you, and I never called you.
And I had 2 missed calls. Now, I never get calls from Franco. It's text all the time. So I was thinking, what on earth has happened that he's required 2 things? I thought it was like, is he going to reschedule the record today?
Yeah.
Has he had a fucking heart attack and he wants me to be the last person he ever speaks to on the planet? But I was thinking, 2, what was going on? And then I was like, oh, it was just we got the wrong
slightly
image.
wrong image. So all of you who listened on day one, which is quite a few, because I went onto the data to see, and it'd been downloaded a couple of hundred times. I was like, oh, fuck's sake. They're going to think that my brilliant observation isn't 100% accurate. So now, if you listen to...
I don't look like a tea towel. What are you on about?
I even jumped on Instagram and on Twitter to be like, this is the right image, guys. This
your
is the right
very
image.
quick course correction. This is what we meant, all right? We're still funny. We're still relevant.
Yeah, so I'm really over... I do that, though. I hyperfixate and I panic over the smallest stuff. But I was thinking... If you were listening and you went to go look at the image, you'd be like, it doesn't really look like a tea towel. It's not too bad. But then if you look at the actual one, it is shockingly bad, isn't it? It's so fucking...
So anyone listening after today, you'll be fine. You'll be none the wiser until you listen to this episode, of course. Then you'll see what a shambles we are.
Everyone who listened yesterday probably unfollowed after the disgust of us fucking it up. And, that doesn't look
you get one
like
mistake. You get one mistake and then you're fucking done, unsubbed.
Yeah,
I've got some more potentially bad news about last episode as well. We only got hit with a fucking copyright claim, didn't we?
What?
But it's alright. It's only in Russia we've been cancelled. Putin's fucking cast the first stone. But I looked at our little stats and we don't get any listeners in Russia anyway.
Why?
So
Why?
No
What's the Kremlin got a problem with this time?
I don't know, but I've decided that I'm starting Cold War number 2. Total freeze out. I'm just... Yeah, I think. Well, they've just gone too far this time. Putin, after all these things, this is where I've lost my head with it.
Our comrades in Russia betrayed us.
I know, so I'm calling on our listeners, our loyal bannermen. There's no fence sitters in this upcoming war. You either agree that it's a God-given right to put, very humorously, the Clash song "I Fought the Law and the Law Won" on a podcast episode that talks about laws, or you're just a slave to the fucking hammer and sickle, aren't you? You just like fucking worship Fabergé eggs. It's no good.
So ironically, we fought the law and the law won.
Yeah,
so
the law beat us.
There's little.
It's all right. Luckily, we don't get any from the stats I'm looking at. Anyway, we don't have a single one Russian listener, so we haven't lost anything really. And I prefer to be on the side of democracy in this.
So we're not massive in Stalingrad or whatever Stalingrad is now called. I think it's still called.
No, we'll march on them still, obviously, just for the slight. Because I mean, it's clear Putin's just terrified that our pod is going to galvanise the West. So we just we're being cancelled, mate. Yeah,
I did just call it Stalingrad. I don't think it's been called Stalingrad for years. It's now called Volgograd. But anyway,
we're talking history, mate.
Yeah,
right? Back in the day, that's our shtick.
What? So how come it's allowed on the UK ones and stuff then? Because it's like under a certain amount of time?
Yeah, I don't know why but we're only banned. There's only the one video, and it's been taken down in. You just can't view it in Russia, basically. So if you are Russian listeners and you want to chuck on a VPN and listen to us, I'm sure that'll still work. But
we're like Pussy Riot, aren't we? We're fighting the.
We're exactly like Pussy Riot. Yeah.
Do you want to hit us with a review?
Yeah, go on then. This is a nice, short and sweet one. This latest review is from POW 20021972. I'm just going to call you POW 2002 now, because that's too many numbers to recite. But POW 2002 said, "It's very funny, 5 stars. It's very funny and makes Welsh history fun. Short, sweet, to the point. Thank you, POW 2002.
Cheers, POW. I'm lead to the beat. POW. What you know about me? POW.
So let it talk. Yeah, I'm lead for the beat. I'm gonna talk grand dogs with me. If you don't know about me, yeah, I'm lead for the beat. I'm gonna talk grand dogs with me. If you don't know about me.
That's just a little bit.
It's very funny, POW.
And also, last bit of admin. If you want to help with the pod costs and running and keeping us in canned, which by that I mean we're having a beer. Although we're not having beers at the moment, are we? We're still off the beer.
Yeah, those who have missed our drunken slurring and rants and anecdotes and riffs, we'll be back on the cans for next episode's recording, I believe.
Yeah, tomorrow night.
So that'll be a boozy one.
I'll be coming back from work in London and then pub in London and then cans on the train. So I won't be home till 10. And we're going to do a record tomorrow night, and we're going to be a few shits to the wind.
I'll probably be sat in my living room drinking cans until you come on. So yeah, it's going to be a messy one, I imagine.
Yeah. But yeah, so if you want to help with just keeping the pod afloat, there's a link to our little money pot, or whatever it is.
A little donations link if anyone's feeling generous.
Yes. Sorry. I'm tired today.
Boring you, mate.
Well, I went out to see John Robbins, the comedian John Robbins, which I'm sure people who follow this will probably know of Ellis James, the Welsh comedian, who does a podcast with John Robbins, who's a Bristolian comedian, and he did his live stand-up show, and he's now he's a recovering alcoholic, and he broke up with his fiancée, and he's all of his life always goes a little bit wrong, and his humour's always laid in getting things a bit wrong. But he won the Perrier Award, which is the best thing at the Fringe you could win a couple of years ago. And knowing his luck, it's the first time in history they ever split it between him and someone else. So things just never work out right for him. But I saw his stand-up show last night, Howl. It was only the third night of it launching, and it was fucking amazing. It is the best stand-up I've ever seen, and I've seen I've been to see Ricky Gervais, I've seen James Acaster, I've seen we're quite fans of we go to live stand-up quite a bit, and it's so sad at points and really intense and bleak, and then within a sentence he makes you gut-wrenchingly laugh, and it's gut-wrenchingly sad and then belly-bustingly laugh. It's just really,
sounds
really
like a
good.
roller coaster, mate.
It is. It's full on. And then the end, he was blighted by tech issues the entire night. So the show was running late. So obviously on the cans.
Was there a sort of kindred spirit element to it with you? Hey, look, mate, me and you were the same. We used to have tech issues on the pod all the time.
Yeah, but it just meant people had more drinks. And there's a show about alcoholism, so it's a bit intense if we're all on the lash. And he's like, yeah, and then he died. But he has like a crescendo to the end, and the entire audio hadn't been working, so he had to have his producer put his phone to the microphone to play a lot of the music. And then at the last minute, like, the music came back on and interrupted his final, and he just threw his mic to the floor, and he was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And he was so sad. And then the crowd were like, "Go on, George, go on," and like showering him with love, which makes it even more emotional. And it was brutal. It was really full on. But afterwards, we were like, "All right, we got to go for a little debrief drink for this." And so I feel I only had like maybe 5 pints, a Skittle bomb, and a like a vodka
just
Coke.
The Skittle bomb, the cherry on top. There.
Well, Emma wanted one.
Why not
to
just
begin
one?
with, because she was a bit hungover from going out the day before, so she wanted a Skittle bomb to give us to perk you up. Because we call Skittle bombs, which if people don't know, a Skittle bomb is a Jaeger bomb, but with Cointreau, and it tastes like Skittles, which are delicious.
It's so sweet, yeah.
So yeah, I feel just a little bit foggy and groggy today. Just so.
Yeah, I just feel a little bit sort of poisoned from the weekend because I had my fill on the weekend. I don't feel terrible, but when you just got like the remnant of the poison in your bloodstream. Yeah. Just in time, it'll be gone by tomorrow, I imagine. But then we're getting on the lash again. So
the mega lash. So well, stay tuned for the next episode. So what's today's episode going to be about then? Oh, so hang on, let me try and do a link because I like doing a link.
Okay, yeah, go on.
So we were fishing. So John Robbins' comedy is about him being very guarded at times, which leads us nicely onto today's episode, which is about fish guarded.
Boom! You found your niche here, mate. These little links, very good.
Yeah, I hate myself.
But yes, today we're going to be talking about the Battle of Fishguard. So, people often mistakenly reference the Battle of Hastings in 1066 as the last time mainland Britain was invaded. But if you were to say that, all the other historians in the rooms, all the boffins, would point at you and laugh and ridicule you into submission because you would be
virgin.
Yeah, go, you fucking loser. You haven't got the first clue about history. So, because the French invaded southwest Wales in 1797. And guess what? That is more recent than 1066. So that's why you'd be a snivelling mess on the floor.
As to un cheval, oui, just j'ai un cheval. Prends le taxi. I'm learning French, by the way, on Duolingo. Are you a horse?
Very good.
Tu es très jolie. Ça va bien, monsieur.
I remember, I think I can say the girl is reading, maybe.
Yeah, go on.
No. La fille.
Yeah.
La fille? Yeah, there we go. That's about it. Yeah. That's the extent of
that's just
French
the girl.
there. Oh, is it? But I thought it was like la fille, you know?
Oh,
like la garçon lit. There we go, the boy.
Yeah, leave. I think it's leave. I knew, who gives a fuck? The way you can tell, book is leave with like with a V, and then read is without the V. And the way you remember it is the V looks like a book opening.
Nice. Another top linguistic tip from you there after yesterday's one. The last episode.
I'm on 89 days of learning Duolingos. So I'm this time next year.
Wait until we crack. I'll catch up and we'll start something new. Tales for France, and we'll just do a French one. Yeah, why not? Anyway, moving on from that shit joke. Yeah. Where was I? Yeah, so if you're a big dum-dum, you think 1066 was the last invasion. Big dum-dum. But it was actually in 1797 when West Wales was invaded by France. So, a little bit of background to the whole thing. Why were they there? What were they doing? So back in 1797, as I mentioned, Napoleon Bonaparte was busy conquering Central Europe. And while he was over there shooting cannons and shit, I don't really know much about that.
Well, are you going to watch that film? The new one with
yeah, I'll probably watch that. That'll probably be my only sort of research I ever do on that period. But yeah, so he was over there shooting cannons, killing people, and conquering Europe and whatnot. And back in France, the newly formed French revolutionary government, known as the Directory, hatched a cunning plan to take a foothold in Britain.
So is that his army?
It's like the government at the time, a revolutionary government called the Directory.
And they're part of Bonaparte's gang, are they?
Yeah, they're part of the French army, but I'll go into like sort of what the army was comprised of now. There was a little bit of French soldiers, and then there's I'll go into it a bit in a sec. But basically You should be. And so the plan was a 3-pronged strike to get a foothold in Britain. The French would send 15,000 troops to Ireland to support a group called the United Irishmen. So these were another revolutionary group. They were not fans of the British Crown and wanted to cause a bit of unrest. And the combined forces of the French and Irish would then draw British troops over to Ireland, allowing the other two invading forces to secure their landing sites with relatively little resistance. So one of the other landing sites was at Newcastle, and then a smaller force of 1,400 men.
What the French bastards doing here? Don't think you're a long way from home?
You're a long way from home.
Bite a grove. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. You get the idea.
Yeah.
So, like I said, there's a smaller force then, 1,400 men, led by an Irish-American named Colonel William Tate. And that force was to be sent originally to Bristol to raise the city and then move on to Chester and eventually Liverpool. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this force was 1,400 men. 400 were actual French soldiers that weren't needed in Napoleon's sort of shenanigans. So these were 400 actual soldiers loyal to France and all that, and the rest though were made up from convicts and ex-prisoners. It was called what was called a penal force. Nothing to do with penis though.
Cock,
apparently.
Yeah.
Cack.
The strung out cock.
Yeah. But I don't know why it's tickled me, but yeah.
You like tickling cocks, don't you? Sorry.
Oh god, it's too easy.
It's such a fun word to say in American accent.
Me and Amy always say anything that's got even sounds or rhymes with cock. We go cack. There's like my local pub. My nearest pub to me is the Heathcock, but we never call it the Heathcock. We call it Heathcack.
Heathcack.
Anyway, we are getting on a rant here, a cock-based rant. But anyway, so yeah, like I said, 400 actual French soldiers. The rest were like made up of convicts, ex-prisoners, and very undisciplined and all that. They were all very well armed, but yeah, there was sort of less than half of them were actual soldiers. So come the day for the plan to be executed, all three groups of ships were met with horrendous weather. So the largest force that was headed to Ireland was scattered and depleted, with not even a single soldier setting foot on Irish soil.
What, they
the second
died?
Force bound... some of them died, but most of them turned back, and they were just scattered. The sort of convoy of ships was like all split up, and so they just sacked it off. Basically,
I'm just gonna say, like people have a go at the British weather. It's so sometimes useful in defending your country because it's so hard to make headway. The
nature itself,
and the Irish Sea is incredibly rough, and the seas that go between, the waters around the UK are really hazardous. So it's like notoriously hard to get onto. Back to you.
But yeah, this was exactly an example of that. So the contingent of men that were headed to Ireland, they didn't make it. The second force bound for Newcastle suffered similar weather, was forced to turn back to France about halfway. But Colonel Tate, who was leading the smaller force heading to Bristol, he very either bravely or stupidly probably considering the outcome, but he decided to persevere through. And although the weather was too rough to make landfall in Bristol, he changed course and decided that they'd settle up in Cardigan Bay, which is in southwest Wales. So on February 22nd, 1797, Colonel Tate and his ships were greeted with the fire of a cannon from a local fort as they approached Cardigan Bay. This made Tate very nervous, and he ordered his forces to continue sailing to what was considered a less defended site called Carreg-Wasteg Point, which is about 3 miles from Fishguard. What dopey Colonel Tate didn't realise was that what they heard was just essentially like a local alarm clock. A local alarm clock. I got cock on the mind. Was a local alarm clock for the townsfolk. So have you been to like certain places like Nice does it, for example? They just fire gunpowder. There's no cannonball, and they'll just fire the cannon at certain times of the day to signify the time. This was one of those. So it was just this was just a wake up call for local townsfolk with no cannonball or anything like that. But Colonel Tate was such a scaredy pants that he heard that and assumed that the mainland were firing on him. So he was just a big little Jesse boy, really. And anyway, they sail on down. Yeah, definitely. So they sailed on back then to Carragwastad Point, where they thought would be quieter, and by 2 a.m. they anchored up there, and by 2 a.m. the next day they'd put ashore 17 boats worth of troops, 47 barrels of gunpowder, 50 tons of cartridges and grenades, and 2,000 stands of arms. So they assembled quite quickly on the beach there.
Do you know what a stand of arms is?
I looked at it, and it's basically a stand for all your weapons, so they're easy to grab, rather than being in like a pile, you know.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I read. That was one first Google result. So if it is something other than that, too late.
Sorry.
This episode will have gone by then. Yeah, sorry. So the irregulars in the French forces, that is the troops that weren't actual soldiers, they were known as irregulars, they quickly broke ranks and began to just loot any properties nearby for swag and booze. In the meantime, Welsh forces were being amassed and sent as reinforcements, including volunteer infantry, the Pembroke Yeoman Cavalry, the Pembrokeshire Militia, and a few merchant ships that had brought cannons, half to be placed at Haverfordwest Castle and the other half sent to Fishguard to assist the forces there. By the time all the various reinforcements had been amassed, John Campbell, the Baron of Cowder at the time, was given overall command of the mixed offensive force, and they headed to Fishguard. Thomas Knox, who was a 28-year-old lieutenant colonel with 0 combat experience, was the man in charge of the volunteer infantry that was located at Fishguard, totaling around 200 men. So, just to be clear, and not so this isn't too confusing, John Campbell, the Baron of Cowder, he's amassing all these forces, and they're coming from Haverfordwest way to assist with Fishguard. And Thomas Knox, now this guy with 0 experience, he's got about 200 men, volunteer militia, that were based in Fishguard. So they're there on site, if that makes sense. Yeah. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, cool. So while plenty of residents did do a runner once the invasion was apparent, there was much more locals that pledged themselves to defend Fishguard and support Knox and his infantry, and they all turned up with improvised weapons. So like, pitchforks and fucking rakes and trowels, who knows what. But then, yeah, like proper angry farmer folk, you know.
Yeah.
So although John Campbell and his reinforcements were en route, Knox was heavily outgunned and outnumbered and had to make one of 3 decisions while he waited for the much-needed numbers. He could attack the French, defend from Fishguard, or retreat towards the reinforcements coming from Haverfordwest. He reasoned that to fight such an overwhelming force was foolhardy, and so decided to retreat and meet Campbell's reinforcements.
And how many of them were there? It was like 400, around 400.
There was 200 of the militia in Fishguard.
Yeah, and how many of the French on the beach?
1,400, so 1,400.
1,400, fucking hell.
Yeah, so he was vastly outnumbered. So both armies then, the Welsh armies now, they managed to meet each other up at Trefgarn, which is about 8 miles south of Fishguard. Campbell then took control of the combined forces, and all in all, they were about 600 men. But these were like the 200 militia, the rest were like actual soldiers. The French irregulars' behaviour by this point had worsened, and discipline among them had basically collapsed after they found a huge stash of wine that locals had acquired from a recent Portuguese shipwreck off the coast. So they found a shitload of wine, and they just decided to get absolutely battered. And the invasion began losing a lot of momentum as all these ex-cons and criminals and whatever, they started mutinying, rebelling, and in some cases they just fucked off to the Welsh countryside. Apparently, they just got hammered and went, right, I'm going, can't be arsed with this. So the Welsh locals were actually very hostile to the invading force as well. So anytime they come across French, they'd attack them, and there was deaths on both sides of the battle. So some French killed some Welsh killed some French.
Do you have a time frame of how long they were there?
They were only there for 2 days, so this is halfway through like the first day. There was actually a local legend called Jemima Nicholas. She was a 47-year-old woman known locally as Jemima Vowed or Jemima the Great in English.
Oh, God, Jemima.
Guess what Jemima did? She sounds like an absolute hero. She captured 12 French soldiers all on her own with just a pitchfork and tied them up in a church and barred them in.
12.
Now, I don't know if that 12. I don't know if that was one at a time, just sort of slowly added to the mix. But I much prefer the idea of big old Jemima, just this absolute big bird barreling through troops.
She reminds me of I think have we got the same reference here? Are we gonna? I'm gonna say
Friar Tuck.
Well, close to it. I was going to say the giant chicken in Robin Hood, the cartoon. You know, the Scottish lady?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's like the big hen, yeah.
Hey, listen here, laddie. That lady.
That's a very good reference. I imagine she's just like that, just boffing people and then poking a bloody pitchfork at them. But yeah, so Jemima Nicholas, old Jemima the Great, she got 12 French soldiers out of the equation just on her own. So go on, girl. So as the first day was drawing to a close, both forces were at a bit of a stalemate because Campbell and the Welsh forces were quite anxious because the French had superior numbers, but they were completely unaware of how badly the chain of command had fallen apart and like how many of their troops had fucked off and like were just pissed and whatever. Whereas Tate and the French soldiers, they didn't know how many men the Welsh army had. So supposedly Jemima vowed, who comes back into this now, she also told the women of Fishguard to wear black cloaks and wear soldiers' hats and emulate the military formations on a visible hill. And she'd tell them to do this early in the morning so that visibility was high enough you could see people there, but you couldn't exactly see what was going on. So the French were thinking, because they were wearing the military hats and doing the military formations, they assumed this was like their forces.
Yeah.
And it made the Welsh army's numbers look exaggerated then. And that very evening, Campbell treated with 2 French officers. The officers wanted to negotiate the conditional surrender of Campbell's forces, but Campbell, with his best poker face, bluffed the French, insisting he had the superior numbers and that he would only accept an unconditional surrender from Colonel Tate, and that he had that he had until 10 a.m. the next day to accept, otherwise the French would be slaughtered. So yeah, absolutely Billy Big Bollocks on Campbell there, just trying to bluff his way out. And so the following morning, the British forces lined up in formation, and then the residents of Fishguard that were unable to fight, they lined up alongside the cliffs behind to watch the potential battle, or surrender. They didn't know which way it was going to go. Now, the locals on this cliff were mostly women, dressed in traditional Welsh attire. So for those who don't know what that is, or what that looks like, it's kind of like a black bonnet with like some frills on it. They have like these like dresses, and they have this red shawl. And basically what happened is the French were confused, and they mistook all these people in red atop the cliffs. They mistook the red shawls for the red of the British soldiers' uniforms, giving the impression that they were infantry up on the cliffs. Yeah. So they looked like they had like thousands of men. Yeah. When it was just our lovely Welsh ladies, just all there looking down at what could be a battle sort of thing. Yeah. It's also worth noting that most of the French troops were probably half pissed or on their way to being pissed as well at this point, because the irregulars were still like guzzling wine. But anyway, the French promptly shit themselves, and Tate accepted the terms of unconditional surrender, feeling that he was massively outnumbered after seeing the line of red on the cliffs. And then Tate and his men were marched to Haverfordwest and imprisoned. And yeah, that was basically... Well, not so much a battle, but tame for a battle, actually, relatively blood-free. Only a few Welsh and French died. Like, I think it was 6 altogether. Yeah. But yeah, it's still an interesting little tidbit of Welsh history.
Yeah, especially because like people don't kind of forgot that happened and how it could have easily changed. I wanted to say that I went on to Jemima Nicholas's Wikipedia page. She was either a cobbler or a cobbler's wife. And she was also involved in later years in the Fishguard riots, though she was not convicted of any crime. And she died at the age of 82, and there's a plaque for where she died. And a hat that belonged to her was sold to for £5,000 to someone in Australia. And there's a children's book around her called Heroine of the Fishguard Invasion, and she's noted in the top 100 Welsh women who made a significant contribution to Welsh life. So I think we should try and look more into old Jemima.
Jemima vowed, yeah, definitely. Yeah. When I was reading this, there was like a nice little, almost like a folk hero-y aspect to it. You know, like I can just imagine this big bolshy one with a pitchfork fucking manhandling the French soldiers.
Come here, you dirty French
slapping them up, giving them a clip round the ear when they're talking back and stuff. You know, I just totally imagine them.
There's also a website called jemimavowed.co.uk, and it's like a miniature figurine website. It's called Wargaming on the Edge ... of Wales, and it's like have a look at it. The first image is of a woman in
jemimavowed.co.uk.
Yeah. And
Is that it? Oh, yeah.
Jemima with like a piss pot, one of those like things about to attack a
having
really
a go at French people.
the most French-looking man I've ever seen. He's like,
I'll have to take that and crop that for the image, and I'll actually do it right this time. All right.
But scroll down. It's just that they've reenacted it. This website's fucking archaic, but it's just someone has got all these figurines of that.
It looks like like Warhammer. Yeah. He's just done his own little Warhammer with like the British troops and the French troops, and then he's got one for Jemima. Yeah, just fucking throwing a piss.
But it's all on one page. We got to scroll down, and it's
it's so long.
Yeah, so I'm gonna get lost on that instead of working today. But I really enjoyed that. I really like. It's been on our list for ages, and I actually didn't know much about it. But I think we should rock down to we should go visit Jemima's grave. Yeah,
pay our respects. Yeah. She sounds like a hefty woman, a powerful presence.
To be 82 is a long old life in the 1800s.
Well, mate, she's made of strong stuff, clearly.
Yeah.
God, this website is fucking long, isn't it? I've been scrolling through for ages now. It's not even halfway.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So don't get lost in that, because I could get lost. I noticed myself starting to get lost, so I was like, okay, I should go back to paying attention, because it's fucking... There's something enamoured about it. There's one of them is a Frenchman on a horse waving a white flag. It's like, I don't know where... This guy just built all these himself.
Fair play to him. I mean, everyone needs a hobby, I guess.
Yeah. It is pretty wild. But anyway, I think that's us for the episode, isn't it?
I think so, mate. Yeah, it's another short and sweet one.
I think our lunchtime ones are always quite concise. But I don't mind that. I think it's quite nice.
We're efficient when we're not full of cans, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's better. We do one longie and one shorty every so often. It's probably what the people want. They don't want to have us hacking on for too long, I suppose, which we're doing now. But.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. Well, we'll have another one the next week, and that one will be a little bit more messy, I imagine, and
that's
require lots more editing. But
a lot more editing, and it's not going to be. Should we do a teaser? I should just save it.
Little sizzle reel.
We could say, we're going to do things to help you in the pub. So just that's it.
We'll leave it at that. I'm doing that thing where you tap your nose.
I was just doing that then. I was just doing the old nose tap. And I had no one in the room with me, which is mad.
That's why we're co-hosts, my friend. We're on the same wavelength.
Yeah. Can people also get in touch? Because someone sent me... I got a really nice... I had a message from... Let me just name... sorry, bear with me whilst Grandad gets his phone out. Oh. From someone called Reese. So Reese dropped a message because it was England Dude Day the other day, and he now lives in England Dude's house where he once grew up. What did he say?
Ooh.
He lived in the house I grew up in, and he mentioned that there's a story in Corwen where one time where England Dude was in a pissy fit of rage. He threw his sword off like a mountain, and it landed fucking hundreds of meters away, and now there's a church based on where it landed, but the distance from where he threw it to where it landed is like comically far away, as if he's just like he's just stormed up a hill and went, I fucking hate the English, oh fuck off, and he just launched his sword really far,
like it's a mile away. It traveled a fucking mile.
And it's similar to that of like the Arthur story, because apparently where he threw it, it landed in a rock, similar to sort of the stone. And he also said that there's stories of hidden tunnels in the house where him and his brother used to try and find the hidden, the little, what they call hatches, to find where these escape routes were in the house and stuff. So I think we should look more in. We should do an England Dude special for sure, and we probably should have done it to coincide with England Dude Day, but we are not.
I did think that when that came out, I was doing something in work for it, like an internal thing, and I was writing it, and I was thinking, I should do something for the pod on this. That's exactly the sort of thing that we should be thinking about. And then it's like, too late, done it now.
But people get in touch with us and let us know some of the cool facts about where you're from and any cool little Welsh history tidbits from where you're about, because they're fun to hear.
Yeah, any suggestions, anything like that?
Yeah,
get in touch. We love chatting with you goons.
Yeah, you absolute goons. We got a few. We got another. I think 10 lined up. We always add into the list. Actually, no, we've got quite a few on here. But it'd be good to hear some from you guys, what we should cover next.
Yeah, let us know what you want. You want us to do more of a certain thing? You want us to do less of a certain thing?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
We normally say keep your opinions to yourself. If this was season 1 Tales for Wales, we'd be telling you to fuck off and don't bother getting in touch. But we've adapted, we've evolved, you know, we can take the criticism now. So yeah, get in touch. What you like and what don't you like.
I watched Wolf, which is a Welsh-produced thriller, which does suffer from a bit of that poor writing that some like BBC stuff can have, where you can picture it written down quite well, or when you read it written down, it makes sense, but when you say it out loud, the acting's not always there. So like one of the things was like like a guy, you know, the guy who's in charge, the mean guy in charge of the castle in fucking hell, Game of Thrones, the Wall.
That does not narrow it down. But are you on about? I know you mean he's the leader of the Night's Watch. Snow. What's his name?
Yeah, he's the one who hates Jon Snow, and he's like, "Oh, you bastard! You are a bastard." The guy who's in charge, the one who hates Jon Snow out on in the Night's Watch, he's in it, and says Iwan Rhean plays Ramsay Bolton. And he's in it, and he's obviously brilliant because he's very good in this stuff. But even he can't deliver some of the lines because they just, when you verbalise them, they're just a bit shit. You know, it's a bit cheesy. It's not how real humans speak. So that you can picture it written down and you can read it in your head and it makes sense. But the minute it's verbalised, you're like, oh, that doesn't sound quite right. Yeah. Like, he grabs like a 50-year-old man and he like whimpers and he's like, so where's your stiff upper lip that your generation always bangs on about? It's like, oh, no one really speaks like that. It's just like, it's a bit cringe. But point being, it's quite good. So
right, yeah. So apart from the slightly cringe dialogue, sometimes worth a watch.
It's worth a watch. It's also my partner hates horror, but she's quite into thrillers, and so it means I get to watch something slightly scary. And it's cool because it's all filmed in Wales. And it's all filmed in Cardiff, Newport and Monmouthshire, so you can see if you're from that area, you can spot stuff. And the company who make
always up for promoting some Welsh media, something that's homegrown.
The company who made it have gone on now, so they're called Wolf TV, I think they are. I think they're Bad Wolf. They're that company who we mentioned on the Wales on Film, who are kind of sponsored by Welsh government. They've just been commissioned for 6 new series, all filmed in Wales, that has American backing, so they're going to be...
Oh, amazing, yeah. So we're coming up. Wales is coming up, guys.
Yeah, Welsh cinema's massively on the up, there's an article on the BBC around it, but I thought we should do another Wales on Film episode in the coming months. Sorry, that's a ramble at the end. Anyway, diolch yn gwrando. Thanks for listening. Love you, bye.
Yeah, ta-ra.
Bye.
50 Fishguard ladies on and fox, pots of hardy steel and hats like chimney pots, crafty fingered wenches tying all the Frenchies up in knots. We'll have you running back to cabaret. We'll have you quaking in your knees. We'll have you running back to cabaret. We'll have you running across the seas. Yeah, we've got you running back to cabaret. We've got you quaking in your knees. Yeah, we've got you running back to cabaret. We've got you running across the seas. 50 Fishguard ladies in a row.